streets of Accra.
Hi, Marcus. How are you? Good to see you. I needed to catch up with you before you go to have your dinner at Kozo and before you fly out back to the US.
Okay.
Because now you are officially Ghanaian.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How does it feel?
Amazing.
Yeah?
Amazing. It's like a rebirth.
It's like a rebirth.
It's like a rebirth.
How was the ceremony for you?
It was a little overwhelming when you think about the history of African Americans in the U.S. and being on ancestral soil and officially being welcomed back home. It was simply amazing.
Yeah.
It really was.
As an African American, how does one feel getting citizenship? Was it an easy process for you? Do you think that it should be easier for African Americans to obtain an African passport?
First, let me say, because people will interpret this interview in different ways, right? So America is a wonderful place. It's a great place. However, there is something about truly belonging. And I think a lot of times you don't realize the burdens that you carry as an African American or in America. And I hate the word African American because we're all Africans, whether you're living in America or you're living in the UK.
Yeah.
But as an African living in America, as a minority, walking into the room and often being the only one in a meeting, walking into a store and being followed around because they suspect that you're stealing, being stopped by the police and being worried about your physical safety. These are things that Black people in America live with on a daily basis. And until you come to the continent and come to a country like Ghana, you don't feel those burdens. They're nowhere to be found. Every corridor of power, there's someone who looks like you, who are the decision makers. The feeling of warmth and welcoming and belonging is tremendously overwhelming. And the only thing I can liken it to, when I first experienced it, I said, okay, this is what, being a Caucasian feels like in
Yeah.
America or in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have any of these shackles, all related to the legacy and the history of slavery and the stigma of race. We just finished the MLK Day in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
and so many of us celebrate the legacy of Dr. King and
Yeah.
the nonviolent movement. But part of me always remembers the other heroes
Yeah.
because too often, we focus on the result, but we don't focus on the other heroes and heroines
Yeah.
that made King palatable and possible.
True.
The Fannie Lou Hamers, the Huey Newtons, the Malcolm X's,
Yeah.
the Angela Davises of the world. All of those contributed as well. They don't have a national holiday, but I think we need to recognize them under the umbrella of King.
Marcus, how was the process of getting your citizenship?
It was relatively easy, but it was serious. The Office of Diaspora did a phenomenal job, right? They ask you a series of questions. They want to know, the number of times you've come to Ghana and your experiences with Ghana, what your plans. All those things are kind of a part of the process. But I think the overarching entry point is simply you're a product of this continent, and the president has said, "Come home." And so there is an open invitation for you to do it. It requires you coming here, experiencing and doing some things, but like I said, it's overwhelming. When I think about the citizenship, what moves me, it took me a while to kind of really process it, and it's simply it's citizenship by choice, not by force. Whether us as Black Americans, we're proud to be American, we're proud to be in America, but it wasn't our choice. This is about choice. I'm not a huge birthday person. My birthday is December 19th, but for me, December 22nd was the day I received my citizenship. That will carry a tremendous meaning to me going forward. And I will acknowledge the day every year because it was that special. And to be in the room with 126 other diasporans taking the pledge, and embracing being Ghanaian. It's just, you can't put it into words. It can't put it into words. And you just feel unburdened, unshackled, completely free. And you feel like, okay, this is where I belong. I can breathe.
Yeah.
I can breathe.
Yeah. This is home. Now, when you're going to Nigeria, you don't need a visa.
That's right. That's true. That's true.
You don't need a visa.
Yeah.
You don't need a visa to Senegal. Marcus, there are about 40 million African Americans in the US. I would say a high percentage of that might not even want to know about Africa or might not even know anything about Africa. How do we change that narrative? And I still feel like a large percentage of them do not know the positive side of Africa. Not everybody will move back, but at least they should experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A big part of it is ignorance. I think you have to come and see and experience. I think they've bought into, unfortunately, cartoonish perception of Africa, these crazy Tarzan movies and all of these images of folks living in trees and all sorts of just horrible stereotypes. Africa, it is an amazing continent and a diverse continent, and the countries are very diverse. So I think a big part of it is simply coming, seeing, and feeling the continent, the music, the food, the culture, and the things that we do instinctively that some of us don't even know enough to give Africa the credit for.
Yeah.
Hip hop was born on this continent. And we all talk about Afro beats, right? It's all Afro beats. So I think we have to recognize the origins of a lot of what we have claimed as our traditions or African American traditions. They're African traditions. There is so much talent and so much richness that derives from this continent. It's overwhelming, and I think that oftentimes blacks that are born in America or Africans that are born in America, because of the legacy of slavery, the stigmatization of race and skin color, they're burdened by all those things, and it impacts their self-esteem. It impacts their ability to compete and to thrive. And that's why I think when you see Africans coming to the US, I think that's why they excel, because they're unburdened by these things, right? They're unburdened by the notion that somehow they're less than because they're black. And I think that if we can convince, particularly the youth, to come, to see, to feel, it'll not only change their lives, but it'll change the lives of the folks on ground. Because one of the things that I've experienced with Ghana is the warmth of the people, the welcoming home, the understanding of this is our ancestral home, and the fact that the government has understood that and embraced that and has made it easier for Black Americans to come back home is just absolutely tremendous.
It's fantastic. And you know, the thing that strikes me about the US is that the black dollar, the amount of investment, the amount of power that we have, we're the ones that buy in Gucci. We're the ones that are feeding all of these people, right? And why can't we just come together and create our own thing? Like, we are giving them so much power.
Absolutely. That's absolutely right. The black consumer is everything. I mean, it's one of the reasons why desegregation happened, right? When there was segregation in the United States, we owned our own businesses. We were our own economy. And so now what you have is that, you know, we are part of the marketing. You can see just, we have hip hop artists in every mainstream marketing campaign you can imagine. It's headlining the Super Bowl last year.
Yeah.
And so how do we leverage that, and how do we bring a lot of that to the continent? And I think it starts with this, right? Buying African brands.
Chocolates.
Amazing. Yeah, there's amazing designers and amazing brands on the continent. And we ought to buy them. We ought to participate and spend our dollars and direct our dollars to black people and to black causes and to black organizations. It's not to say that some of the other designers are not great and wonderful, but we can buy them, we can buy our own as well.
That's what I love about Marcus, because the fact that even before you became a Ghanaian citizen, you were always buying on the continent. Everywhere you go, like literally, I was with Marcus in Senegal. He wants to go shopping. He wants to buy something there in that particular place. And even in Ghana, he's always wearing chocolate or other designers. And you are really showing the way. And I think that that's so important. Even your glasses, right?
Yes.
Your glasses are African.
Yes.
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 So I think that you're right. I think that we need to start with the youth. Last year, the NAACP brought youth from universities. I think that's what we need to go into.
Absolutely.
And bringing them to understand the culture, the people, that this is where you're from.
Absolutely.
What is your feeling about the Elmina Castle, the Cape Coast? What was your feeling the first time that you went there and experienced there?
Yeah, it's an emotional journey, and I would say that every African American who is a product of slavery ought to make that pilgrimage, because it is a pilgrimage. The only thing I can liken it to is going into the Holocaust Museum in Washington D.C. and seeing the images of gas chambers and bodies piled up. And I'm not Jewish, so you can imagine the feeling of our people. I mean, yeah, I remember going into the dungeon and seeing this black substance on the floor and being told that it was blood and feces and urine. And then right above this dungeon was a church. The audacity to worship Christ, where you're destroying humanity right below you. And then in 2020, having the privilege of walking into the same dungeon with the Attorney General of then Attorney General of Washington D.C., Carl Racine, and Letitia James of New York, and seeing them, seeing their emotional reaction, seeing the tears crystallize in their eyes. It's a journey that every Black American that can trace their roots to slavery must make. It'll change. And I will say that every white American, every American who has an opportunity to experience it, because it brings about the understanding of how brutal and awful the institution of slavery was. And so it stands as a visual monument to those who have went on before us. And it's a reminder that something like this can never happen again. It's a reminder that we have to do what it takes to destroy and tear down the badges of slavery, because the impact is still there. I was recently watching a clip of Dr. King when he spoke about this notion that everyone believes that African Americans in the U.S. just need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. But he spoke about how that is a ridiculous statement when you make that statement to a bootless man. So when you freed slaves by the Emancipation Proclamation, but you didn't give them land, you didn't give them compensation. So you basically left them to fend for themselves, and that has a generational impact. And so I think Cape Coast and even Gorée Island in Senegal, but the rawness of it has to be felt, has to be experienced.
Marcus, did you ever do the African ancestry to see where you are from? Do you think it's important? Do you think that you should just come, see which African country you feel like spiritually, feel like this is home?
I think it's important to know. I've done it, but I think what's most important, if you're Black, anywhere in the world, you come from this continent. It's that simple. There's nowhere else in the world that Black people derive from but the continent of Africa. So it is the cradle of civilization. It is your ancestral home. Like me, you have a little bit of Ghana, a little bit of Nigeria, a little bit of Togo. Most Black Americans derive from West Africa, yes. And it resonates with my spirit when I'm in West Africa. I can really feel kind of who I am. Travel and experiencing the continent is really, really, really important. It's the fastest way. And I've talked to well-educated Black Americans that are a little reluctant to go to the continent. They'll go to other places. They go to islands and the Caribbean, but to come to the continent, there's a level of apprehension. And like I said, a lot of it is just because they bought into the stereotypes. But oddly enough, films like The Woman King by Viola Davis and Wakanda are helpful.
They are
right? Because it portrays Africa in the way that it should be portrayed. The rich history, some of it is fantasy, but a lot of it is, they really did a good job tapping into some of the cultural points and the cultural aspects of various different countries in Africa, right? Because the countries are very, very diverse.
Yeah. What opportunities have you seen on the continent?
Sure, I think Africa is the most creative, most innovative, most can-do place that I've ever been to. So if you think about simple ways of doing things, if there is a problem of getting water from point A to point B with very little resources, very little equipment,
Yeah.
they'll figure out a way to do it. And so the innovation drives everything, and it's here. The people are brilliant, they are hardworking, they are creative, and it's all here. You can see it in the art, you can see it in the music, you can see it in film, you can see it in the design of buildings and architecture. It's all here. And some of it is there's a need to harness it, there's a need to expose it. And the work that you're doing with Guba is an example of that. So,
And then you love art. How do you see the African art? Because you're always buying art.
yeah.
How do you see us really pushing the art industry?
A big part of it is just getting exposure.
Yeah.
The talent is overwhelming. And then getting, some of it's cultural, right? I talk to a lot of artists who, their parents are reluctant to endorse their art career. They're like, you must be a lawyer, you must be a doctor, you must be. So to break that mindset and expose not just the younger folks to the beauty and the value of art, but some of the older folks as well. Because for them, a lot of it was not valued and it was overlooked. And so I think there's a lot happening on the art scene, and I'm proud to participate in that. I buy a lot of African art, and the
You need
comments
like
that I
5,
get.
6 rooms or 7 rooms for your art, Marcus.
I mean, well, thankfully, I have a brother-in-law that I often buy for him. He has
Okay.
a custom framing shop, and so
Okay.
he was selling prints primarily.
Okay.
The name of this place is Arts World
Okay.
in New Jersey, and he was selling primarily prints. And I said to him, I said, what about selling some original art? And original art, sometimes the price point is out of reach, but it's been a real opportunity to showcase some artists. And he's constantly asking for some of the same artists.
Oh,
And
brilliant.
a lot of them are Ghanaian artists, a lot of them are Nigerian artists. Yeah,
That's
so it's
brilliant. So you are always on the continent because your other hat that you wear many hats, you're on many boards, including Guba. One of the boards that you're on is the AGA.
yes.
Tell us a bit about AGA and what it does and how you work on the continent.
AGA, the Attorney General Alliance, is an organization that started in the US 30 years ago. And so about 7 years ago, I was involved in a case in Nigeria on behalf of Pfizer.
So he's a lawyer, by the way. He's a
Yes,
lawyer.
lawyer by training, lawyer by day, lawyer by
Lawyer
night.
everything.
And so in sitting through meetings and meeting with government officials, I was on the board of AGA US.
Okay.
And we did work in Mexico and we did work other places. And I said, wow, we could use some of this training and networking on the continent. And so I went to the executive director and I said, look, can we do something in Africa? And she said, well, if you can come up with funding. And so I went to talk to my bosses at Pfizer, and our general counsel was very, very supportive because what AGA Africa now does is training on all sorts of transnational crimes, working with prosecutors, judges, and investigators on issues related to cybercrime, human trafficking, domestic violence, election security. Even though it has nothing to do with our core business at Pfizer, the leadership at Pfizer understands what it means to be a good corporate citizen. Understand how do we pour back into the community.
Right. That's fantastic. I think the training has been impactful. I know in Ghana it has, you've done several events where you brought some AGAs to the continent. How was that first trip for them?
So in the United States in 2020, I think we had a total of 9 African American or Black state AGs. First time in history to have that many. And we had
9 is actually small still.
still small.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I was in the Attorney General's office in New Jersey at the time, serving as chief of staff to the first black Attorney General of New Jersey.
And who was that?
Peter Harvey.
Okay.
And at the time, we only had 2 black state attorneys general, and the other one was in Georgia, Thurber Baker, and that was it. And so to see that number go from
Yeah.
yeah
2 to 9.
to 9
Yeah.
is progress.
Yeah.
And so 7 of them were here in Ghana, and they had such an amazing experience. I mean, like I told you about their experience at the Cape Coast, but it was beyond that. It was interacting with children at a school, you know, visiting some churches. It was just having a conversation with the African American community that has resettled in Ghana. It was almost a spiritual, and then of course we did the work, right? We did a conference on human trafficking, but for so many of them, it was an emotional and a spiritual time. I was just with Kwame Raoul of Illinois. I was at his swearing in Chicago, where he was actually named after your former president, Kwame Nkrumah. Yes, so he was named, and so I went to his swearing in, and him and his wife, Lisa, all they could talk about was their time in Ghana and how beautiful and amazing it was. And so it was a tremendous, tremendous pilgrimage. I was happy to be part of that delegation.
And you've been part of the December in GH. Which is, I mean, when I had an interview with Vanessa Williams, she was like, look, I went to Afrochella, I went to this, I went to that, there's so many events. How was your December in GH?
It was amazing. And I actually ended up here longer because of the flight cancellations, right? So I had the citizen ceremony, which was fantastic, and I was planning to leave, but I ended up staying, and it was just an amazing experience. I think they said over 100,000 people came, and so, and I could see the reaction of some of the celebrities that you would bump into. They were amazed, and some of them on the continent for the very first time. Shalimar the God, I bumped into him in the elevator.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah, and it was his first time in Ghana, and he was completely bowled over. So to see that, what I hope is the world sees it, and other Black Americans see it, and other members of the diaspora see it, and they come and they experience it, and then figure out ways to contribute to the continent. You know, like so just this week, saw a report in the northern areas of Ghana, there's 39,000 students without desks.
We're actually donating desks. I'm going to Northern Region tomorrow.
Really?
We raised money to buy some tables and chairs for children in the Northern Region. So I'm going to Tamale, and then it's a 3-hour drive to the Upper East region.
I wish I would have known, because
you would have come.
I would have come. But not only that, I will help. I want to help with this effort. And just the other day, I met with a woman who was running a orphanage for abused and neglected children in Labadi.
Was it Beverly?
Yes.
Beverly?
Yes. Yeah. And I was talking to her about ways how we can help, because there is work to be done. And so I feel like Ghana has given me so much already, and I want to continue to give back and raise money and raise awareness. It's unacceptable. 39,000 students without desks. We're not talking about computers. We're not talking about laptops and fancy. We're talking about desks. And not only that, those desks, you can have them made here in Ghana.
Yeah, that's what we've done.
Right?
So we've employed a Ghanaian person to make the tables and chairs.
Fantastic.
And that's what we're
Fantastic. And please let me know. I would love to join with you in making sure that every one of those 39,000 students gets a desk.
Absolutely. And that's why I feel so proud when I see diasporans are trying to make an impact here. Like Michael Blackson, you know, he's built a school now.
Yes, I heard about that. Yes.
Which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
For his area where his mother is from. Fuse, the artist, again, he's built a school in Akosombo. So I think that, you know, all of these little drops of things that we're doing, which are huge investments, will make an impact on the continent.
Absolutely.
Because Markus, I always ask myself, like, what is the role of us diasporans? How can we make an impact on the continent?
Absolutely. You're right. Not everybody has the desire to move back, or should, right? Like, so if you like your life in America and the UK, but you could still touch the continent.
Yeah.
You can still impact and help change and contribute to the economy here. You know, where you choose to vacation, where you choose to visit, where you choose to give your children a cultural experience. Consider not just consider the continent, come to Ghana. The notions that this is unsafe, that it's, you know, that there's not amazing places and restaurants, it's absolutely
crap.
You're right.
There are, look, even in LA, right? I went to LA, there are homeless people that are laying on
Absolutely.
the floor outside. There are good parts and bad parts to every single country. And so they always seem to show the bad parts for us. But me, on my channel, I will continue to promote Africa and to drum on the fact that, you know, we have to be one, we have to unite, and we in the diaspora have to come and invest back home on the continent. I keep saying, not everybody will come, but you can invest. You can, like Marcus said, you can touch somebody on the continent and help, whether it's helping a charity. 39,000 children are sitting on the floor having education every single day. You can make an impact. You can help in some way, in some form. Marcus, I want to say thank you so much for joining me on the show. I don't know if there's anything else that you want to say to your brothers and sisters who are watching. I get so many comments on my show, and people are still like, yes, I'm coming, but I just want you to encourage them.
Yes.
For your last words on the importance of them coming.
Come back home, right? Stay connected to the soil, claim your culture, claim your continent. This is yours. This is the root from which you are derived. And so embrace that, experience the culture and own it. And not only that, be an ambassador for it once you've had that experience. We need to wipe out these notions of these terrible stereotypes and really highlight the magic that's here on the continent.
I think after this interview, I'm hungry now. Can we go to Kozo to eat?
Yes, please.